Hello and welcome. Take a moment to settle in. Let your breathing slow, letting the noise of the day fade into the background. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel your mind loosen. Let history drift around you like warm evening air. If you'd like more quiet stories made to help you rest, remember to subscribe. Tonight we'll take a slow, gentle walk through the everyday rhythms of Hiroshima, before and after 1945. We won't focus on dramatic moments or painful events. Instead, we'll stay close to the small things, the human things, the routines that give life its softness. Let your eyes grow heavy or close if you want, as we step quietly into the past. Take a deep breath in, hold it for a moment, and let it drift out. Imagine Hiroshima before 1945, not as a story in a textbook, but as a real city waking up slowly at dawn. Morning light touches the rivers, 6 of them, weaving through the city like calm silver threads. Their surfaces barely stir. Listen for the faint clink of a fisherman's tools as he steps into his wooden boat, preparing for another predictable morning on the water. Picture the river staying smooth, disturbed only when his paddle dips in and rises again. Along the banks, herons stand still, their reflections floating beside them like pale shadows. Children walk narrow paths, schoolbooks pressed against their chests, sandals tapping softly on the ground. The city is never in a hurry. The first streetcar hums awake, wheels singing a low lullaby. Shopkeepers step outside with brooms in hand and sweep in slow, steady strokes. Left and right, left and right. You can almost hear the bristles brushing gently over stone. Nothing rushed, nothing loud, only small morning rituals unfolding naturally. Inside quiet homes, steam rises from pots of miso soup. Someone stirs rice with the soft clack of a wooden paddle. A grandfather slides open a shoji screen, letting in a breeze carrying the scent of river water. This is the Hiroshima that existed long before the world changed, a place shaped by modest routines, meals shared, paths walked again and again until they became part of the heart. Now imagine a morning market, calm and purposeful. Vendors arrange vegetables in neat, careful rows. Bright white daikon, tall green onions, small bundles of herbs tied with twine. A woman lifts a radish, turns it slowly in her hand, nods quietly, and places it into her basket. The exchange is soft and familiar. Nearby, a tofu maker sets out warm blocks of tofu, steam rising in delicate threads. A fishmonger lays fresh catch on shaved ice, the sound gentle, ice settling, wood tapping, water dripping. Markets like these connected everyone not through excitement but through the calm certainty of daily presence. Inside homes after midday, tatami mats warm in the sun, the faint scent of straw drifting through open doors. A mother ties a cloth around a child's lunchbox. A father tends a small garden, pruning a plum branch and guiding a new sprout upward with patient fingers. Even the quiet held meaning, becoming part of the day's gentle rhythm. As afternoon drifts forward, the city breathes in unison. Streetcars slide past rows of wooden houses. Someone practices the shamisen indoors, soft notes floating through an open window. Children play beside the river, their laughter light and unforced, never too loud, never rushed. The water reflects everything: houses, sky, soft movement. In early evening, lanterns begin to glow, swaying slightly as a breeze wanders through the streets and settles into calm corners. People walk slowly after supper, some towards small shops, others to a neighbour's home, many simply moving for the pleasure of the night air. Steps unhurried, voices soft, families gather again inside, bowls are washed, tatamis swept, futons rolled out for rest. Someone pours tea, its warmth filling the room with a comforting scent. Outside, rivers continue flowing as they always have, steady, calm, patient across generations. Now let your breath soften as we shift the story into something quieter. In 1945, life in Hiroshima changed suddenly, but instead of focusing on that moment, we stay with what came after: the rebuilding, the quiet return of routines, the patient renewal of ordinary life. No drama, no shock. Only resilience expressed in small human ways. Imagine the city hushed, slowly finding its footing again, guided by familiar motions and gentle determination. The rivers continue to flow, unbroken, reminding everyone that nature's rhythm endures even when human life pauses. Birds return to branches, grasses push through soil. People begin recreating what once felt ordinary. Someone rebuilds a cooking space. Another sets up a temporary stall, just a wooden table with a few vegetables. A teacher gathers children under the shade of a surviving tree and begins simple lessons again, offering quiet stability. Each action becomes a whisper of hope, a soft promise that normal life will return. As the city found its footing, people realized even the smallest routines carried comfort. A woman placing a pot on a rebuilt stove, a man sweeping dust from a doorway that had only recently stood upright, a child chasing a dragonfly through new patches of green. None of it grand, none of it loud. Life simply began to whisper its way back. And with those whispers came a gentle shift. Not sudden, not bold, but steady. Streets once silent began carrying new footsteps. People paused when they heard them, almost surprised by the sound of life returning. Merchants set small tables outside, offering whatever goods they could gather. Not much, but enough to remind the city that exchange still mattered. Every small act hinted that Hiroshima was learning how to breathe again. Rebuilding was never simple. Some days brought setbacks that felt heavier than expected. A wall collapsed, supplies ran thin, a neighbour grew ill. Yet even then people pressed on, driven less by ambition and more by quiet necessity. They lifted beams, cleared rubble, shared food, and lent tools. No one worked quickly, and no one needed to. The city understood that slow progress was still progress. Forward was forward. As seasons changed, so did the landscape. Grass found room between broken stones. Trees sprouted new branches instead of scars. Birds returned, their songs faint at first, then stronger. People paused to listen, surprised at how comforting those small sounds could be. It reminded them that nature, too, had its own way of healing. It asked for nothing, expected nothing, and simply kept growing, offering a quiet kind of companionship. Families searched for familiar pieces of their old lives, a bowl that hadn't shattered, a photograph with edges burned but faces intact, a child's toy buried beneath soot. These objects became anchors, small proofs that not everything had been erased. Holding them brought a calm that words couldn't offer. They were reminders that memories could survive even when buildings didn't, and that history wasn't something the blast could fully take. In makeshift homes, evenings grew softer. Lanterns cast warm circles of light, and people gathered quietly around them. They spoke in low tones, not out of fear, but out of respect for everything they'd seen. Stories were shared slowly, sometimes stopping mid-sentence as emotions rose. No one rushed, no one forced anything. The quiet became a kind of shelter, a space where healing didn't need to be loud to be real. Children adapted fastest. They played among ruins without fully understanding what had happened. They turned fallen beams into balance paths and empty lots into fields. Their laughter, though small, traveled far. Adults listened to it like a reminder that the future was still possible. Even in a city marked by loss, children carried a kind of lightness, showing everyone that life naturally sought ways to keep moving forward. Slowly, small markets reopened. Their offerings were modest: rice, vegetables, bits of preserved fish. But seeing them arranged on simple cloths felt like a victory. People gathered patiently, buying only what they truly needed. Conversations were quiet but warm, filled with gentle gratitude. Each exchange, no matter how small, stitched the city together a little more. Community returned not in great waves, but in steady, careful threads. Schools resumed in temporary spaces. Students sat on wooden crates or directly on the floor, notebooks balanced on their knees. Teachers adapted with remarkable calm, guiding lessons even when materials were scarce. They knew that education was more than facts. It was structure, routine, and a signal that tomorrow still mattered. Every softly spoken lesson became an affirmation that the city intended to rebuild both its walls and its future. Medical workers carried on with gentle determination. Their clinics were small, sometimes only a table and a curtain, yet they treated each patient with unwavering patience. Supplies were scarce, but kindness wasn't. People waited quietly, understanding that everyone needed care. The soft murmur of doctors offering reassurance became one of the city's earliest signs of stability, a reminder that compassion could survive even the harshest destruction. Messages from distant relatives began to find their way through. Some brought relief. Others brought sorrow. Each letter was opened slowly, hands trembling slightly, as though the words inside might change the air itself. People read them aloud in soft tones, sharing news with neighbors who felt more like family. The letters connected Hiroshima to the wider world again, reminding everyone they had not been forgotten. Small workshops reappeared, lit by narrow beams of daylight. Craftsmen resumed their trades with quiet precision, mending shoes, repairing pots, crafting tools. The rhythm of their work, the tapping and scraping, became its own kind of music. It echoed down streets that had once been silent. These sounds didn't erase what happened, but they layered something new over it, proof that purpose and skill still lived in the hands of the people. Riverside paths slowly cleared as volunteers worked together, removing debris one piece at a time. The water flowed gently, carrying reflections of buildings that now stood half-built. People walked along the banks for calm, letting the steady movement of the river settle their thoughts. It became a place for quiet reflection, a reminder that time continued moving even when lives felt paused. Temples and shrines reopened, sometimes with little more than a roof and a bell. Visitors arrived not for celebration, but for silence. They bowed their heads, lit incense, and allowed stillness to fill the space around them. It wasn't about answers, it was about presence. These sacred places, damaged but standing, offered the city a gentle spiritual anchor, something to hold on to when words fell short. As autumn approached, cooler winds drifted through the city. People wrapped themselves in simple layers and continued rebuilding. The air felt different, crisper but also calmer. With the changing season came a faint sense of renewal, as though nature was offering a fresh page. Trees shed leaves in soft cascades, reminding everyone that cycles continued, even after great disruption. The city moved with that rhythm, steady and patient. Communal meals became more common. Neighbors gathered around shared pots, each contributing a small portion of food. The meals were simple: rice, broth, bits of vegetables, but they carried warmth beyond their ingredients. People sat close, speaking quietly, sometimes sharing memories, sometimes saying nothing at all. These gatherings reinforced something essential, that even after immense loss, connection remained one of the strongest forces for healing. As winter neared, preparations grew more deliberate. Families patched walls to stop drafts and stored what little food they had managed to gather. Volunteers distributed blankets where they could. The city braced not with fear, but with a collective understanding that they would face the cold season together. It was another reminder that resilience didn't always roar. Sometimes it simply steadied itself and waited. When snowfall finally arrived, it settled softly over ruins, covering the broken edges in white. For a moment, the city looked peaceful, almost untouched. Children stepped outside first, marveling at the quiet beauty. Adults followed, slower, taking in the strange contrast of devastation and calm. The snow didn't erase the past, but it offered a brief, gentle pause, a moment where even grief seemed to breathe more softly. Inside homes, families huddled near small stoves, grateful for any warmth. Conversation stayed low, drifting like the faint heat through thin walls. Despite hardship, there was comfort in simply being together. People spent evenings repairing clothes, boiling water, or planning the next day's tasks. The winter nights were long, but they were filled with a quiet determination that carried the city through the coldest days. When spring returned, it arrived with quiet promise. Buds appeared on trees that many thought were dead. Fields were cleared and planted again, small green shoots emerging from soil that had once burned. Farmers worked slowly but steadily, trusting that the earth still held potential. Each sprout became a symbol of renewal, not just of crops, but of the people who tended them with cautious hope. Hiroshima's streets gradually took shape again. New houses rose beside old foundations. Shops gained sturdy roofs. Roads were cleared enough for small carts to pass. The transformation wasn't sudden, but it was undeniable. Visitors who returned after months away noticed how much had changed. The city was still healing, still fragile, but it was undeniably alive, moving forward with every quiet step. Community gatherings grew more frequent. Festivals resumed in modest forms, simple music, small dances, lanterns made from scraps of paper. People attended not to celebrate extravagantly, but to honor survival. These gatherings reminded them that culture persisted even when structures didn't. Every soft drumbeat, every flicker of light reaffirmed that Hiroshima's spirit had not been extinguished. Letters and journals from the months after the bombing show a remarkable consistency. People wrote of sorrow, yes, but also of responsibility, to rebuild, to care for one another, to carry memory with dignity. Their words were steady, thoughtful, and often understated. They described daily routines with care, as though those routines were the threads stitching the city back together. In many ways, they were. As years passed, Hiroshima transformed further. Streets bustled again, markets flourished, and new buildings stood where ruins once lay. But the memory of the day that changed everything never faded. It lived in memorials, in stories, and in the gentle way citizens approached each new dawn with quiet gratitude and resolve. The city did not rise through defiance, but through steady, deliberate rebuilding rooted in compassion. Visitors from around the world eventually came to learn, to reflect, and to understand. They walked through peaceful parks that once held devastation, reading names and stories etched in stone. The silence there was intentional, a shared space where words felt unnecessary. Hiroshima became not just a city that rebuilt, but a city that taught, offering its history as a reminder of the cost of destruction and the strength of recovery. The people of Hiroshima carried forward with humility. They honored the past without becoming trapped in it. Schools taught the history gently but honestly, ensuring that younger generations understood both the loss and the resilience that followed. The story was never told with anger, but with care. It was a legacy carried softly, like a lantern shielding its flame from the wind. Decades later, the city stood as a testament to quiet perseverance. Its skyline changed, its neighborhoods flourished, and its communities thrived. Yet beneath that growth remained an unspoken promise to cherish peace. The city's strength was not in grand gestures, but in everyday acts of kindness. Hiroshima showed the world that healing did not require noise. It required commitment, patience, and compassion. And so Hiroshima continued forward, steadily, gently, with a resilience shaped by loss but guided by hope. Its story was not one of quick recovery, but of quiet persistence. Each rebuilt home, each planted tree, and each shared moment carried a meaning deeper than words. The city's heart beat softly but strongly, offering the world a reminder that even after the darkest moments, life can return with remarkable grace. In the end, Hiroshima became a place where memory and renewal lived side by side. The city did not try to hide its past, nor did it let that past define every moment. Instead, it carried its history with quiet honesty, offering its lessons to anyone willing to listen. And as each new day unfolded, the city continued to rise, not loudly, not quickly, but with a steady, enduring grace that spoke louder than any monument ever could. Over the next several months, the city moved slowly, almost cautiously, as if unsure how to rebuild a place that no longer felt connected to its own past. Daily routines returned first, small shops opening shutters, street sweepers pushing quiet brooms, and families gathering at makeshift tables. These small acts created a sense of rhythm, even when everything still felt fragile. Workers began clearing roads by hand, lifting broken tiles and charred beams piece by piece. There were no machines, only long days and steady effort. The work moved at a gentle pace, but with a feeling of purpose. People said that restoring the streets was like restoring memory itself, helping each corner feel familiar again, even if it had changed forever. Temporary homes appeared quickly, simple wooden frames covered with thin walls. They were not warm, and they were not spacious, but they were enough to make evenings feel safer. Families gathered inside these small spaces, sharing meals made from whatever ingredients had arrived that week. In those quiet rooms, the sound of bowls and simple conversation brought a kind of calm. Children gradually returned to learning. Their classrooms were nothing more than open-air spaces with boards propped against damaged buildings. Still, the presence of lessons created a sense of normalcy. Teachers spoke softly, aware that the old energy of childhood had not fully returned. Even so, the steady hum of instruction was a sign of life moving forward. Local officials documented everything, every rebuilt home, every restored shop, every newly repaired stretch of road. Records were carefully written by hand, stored in boxes that would eventually form the basis for tracking the city's progress. These documents were not exciting, but they carried the quiet determination of a place trying to understand its own recovery in slow, steady detail. Food shortages remained common. Long lines formed early each morning, moving at a calm, almost patient rhythm. People spoke in low voices, sharing small updates about their neighborhoods. These brief exchanges helped rebuild a sense of community. Even if the meals were simple and repetitive, the routine of waiting together created its own form of stability. As seasons changed, the city began noticing small signs of renewal. New leaves appeared on surviving trees, and grass pushed up through cracks in the ground. These subtle shifts were not dramatic, but people paid close attention to them. Each new sprout felt like a quiet reminder that the land, too, was slowly recovering, one calm moment at a time. Researchers arrived to study the long-term effects on the environment. They took careful notes, collected samples, and moved cautiously through the affected areas. Their presence added a sense of quiet observation to the city. Residents often watched them work in silence, recognizing that their findings would shape how the city understood its future for many years. Memorial gatherings began taking place. These events were small, often held at dusk, with people standing together in stillness. There were few speeches. Most gatherings were simply moments of shared reflection. The quietness of these memorials matched the tone of the city itself, soft, steady, and focused on remembering without stirring overwhelming emotion. By the end of the first year, routines felt more predictable. Streets were clearer, markets slightly busier, and families more settled. Life did not feel the same as before, but it no longer felt suspended. The city moved at a slow but steady pace, guided by the gentle determination of people who rebuilt not through grand gestures, but through patient, daily effort. As the second year began, small shops expanded their stock. Goods arrived slowly, often carried long distances before reaching the city. Shelves were still sparse, yet each new item felt meaningful. People browsed quietly, picking up supplies with a sense of care. Every small restock seemed to signal a gentle step toward a steadier way of living. Schools constructed modest buildings to replace temporary spaces. These structures were simple, made from basic materials, but they offered shelter from wind and rain. Students sat at narrow desks, listening to lessons delivered at a calm, steady pace. The slow return of organized education provided a sense of direction that had been missing for some time. Healthcare workers faced long days. Clinics were small and often crowded, but they operated with quiet efficiency. Doctors and nurses focused on routine care, checking wounds, treating fevers, and offering gentle reassurance. Their steady presence helped many residents feel grounded, even when resources were limited and the future remained uncertain. Local craftsmen rebuilt tools, furniture, and household items. Workshops filled with the soft tapping of hammers and the slow rasp of hand saws. These sounds, though simple, became part of the city's new rhythm. Craftsmanship took time, with each piece shaped through patient effort, reflecting a community gradually restoring its practical needs. Public spaces were cleared to create small parks. These areas offered places for quiet rest, away from the weight of reconstruction. People paused there during the day, sitting on simple benches or walking slowly along narrow paths. The calm atmosphere helped residents take brief breaks from their work, making each day feel slightly more balanced. Markets became more organized. Vendors arranged their goods in small rows and customers walked through at a gentle pace. Prices were written on plain boards and transactions took place with soft conversation. While supplies fluctuated, the market provided a stable gathering point, helping people maintain a sense of routine as the city rebuilt itself. Community meetings were held regularly. These gatherings were calm and straightforward, focusing on practical updates, new construction, supply deliveries, and changes in public services. Residents listened quietly, offering simple questions or comments. The meetings helped coordinate the city's slow progress, ensuring each neighborhood moved forward together. Reconstruction crews repaired bridges and pathways. Without heavy equipment, the work progressed at a measured pace. Stones were placed carefully, and wooden beams were lifted by hand. These repairs reopened important routes, allowing people to travel more easily between districts. Even small improvements made daily life smoother and more predictable. Cultural traditions slowly returned. Modest festivals were organized, though the celebrations were quieter than before. Simple music, soft lanterns, and plain decorations created an atmosphere of gentle reflection. These gatherings did not aim to recreate the past, but to offer moments of shared comfort, reminding people of continuity across time. Libraries reopened with limited collections. Many books had been lost, but volunteers gathered whatever remained, placing them neatly on shelves. People visited to read quietly, finding calm in the simple act of turning pages. The library became one of the city's most peaceful spaces, offering a sense of steady stillness during long days. Water systems were gradually restored. Workers cleaned pipes, replaced broken sections, and monitored flow carefully. Once the system stabilized, households gained access to more consistent water. This improvement changed daily routines, making tasks like cooking and cleaning easier. Though the upgrade seemed modest, it brought meaningful relief to many families. Agricultural fields outside the city were replanted. Farmers worked slowly, testing soil conditions and adjusting planting methods. Early crops were small, but they provided fresh produce that had been scarce. The return of local harvests strengthened food supplies and offered reassurance that long-term recovery was progressing, even if quietly. Public transportation returned in limited form. Buses followed shortened routes, moving at a slow and steady pace through the city. Passengers boarded calmly, carrying bags or small baskets. The buses were not crowded, but they offered reliable mobility, especially for workers traveling to distant job sites. This new consistency supported everyday life. New housing projects emerged. Builders constructed simple, durable homes meant to last through changing seasons. These houses were not elaborate, but they provided safety and a sense of permanence. Streets lined with these modest structures created neighborhoods that felt stable and grounded, helping families feel more settled. Over time, more businesses reopened. Tailors, repair shops, and small eateries offered services that had once been taken for granted. Their return brought familiar routines back into the flow of daily life. People visited these places not only for practical needs but also for the sense of normalcy they provided. Public lighting was restored. Lamps along main roads illuminated the evenings with soft, steady light. Residents walked more comfortably after sunset, no longer relying on lanterns or small flashlights. The streets felt safer and more connected, allowing neighborhoods to remain active later into the day at a calm, unhurried pace. Memorial sites were carefully constructed. These spaces were quiet, designed for reflection rather than ceremony. People visited individually or in small groups, standing silently for a moment before moving on. The memorials served as gentle reminders of the past, offering a place to acknowledge loss without overwhelming emotion. As years passed, the city developed a new rhythm. Mornings were filled with steady work, afternoons with calm routine, and evenings with quiet gatherings. Life did not return to what it had been before, but it grew into something steady and livable. The city's recovery became a story not of swift change, but of patient, persistent effort. By the time a decade had gone by, the city felt firmly rooted again. Buildings stood strong, streets were orderly, and families had created new traditions. The memory of the past remained, but it no longer shaped every moment. Instead, it lived quietly in the background, respected but not overwhelming everyday life. The city's story became one of gradual renewal, soft, steady, and shaped by countless small actions. No dramatic breakthrough defined its recovery. Instead, it was rebuilt through quiet routines, patient labor, and the calm determination of ordinary people who carried the city forward piece by piece until it stood whole once more.